And I'm thankful for the opportunity to work and live on the unceded territory and homeland of the Algonquian Anishinaabe Nation here in this part of the land. Um, so, Tim, I don't know if you know a lot about the EDC. We're one of the federal crown corporations, like BDC and
Hmm.
CC and FCC, Farm Credit Corporation. There's kind of the three main ones. There's other ones as well, but kind of very niche products and whatnot. And so we're a federal crown corporation, completely kind of arm's length, almost independent. Our own balance sheet. We generate our own revenue. We don't rely on sort of money or kind of capital or handouts or any kind of funding from the federal government. We generate all that. In fact, we pay a nice big dividend back every year to the federal government. So that's a good thing. And really, EDC Export Development Canada, it's our role to kind of our mandate is really to it's a pretty broad mandate, but really to help companies pursue international business opportunities and to help create trade capacity within Canada. I don't know if I got that exactly right, but that's kind of what's in the Export Development Act, and that really gives us a broad sort of mandate to help companies engage in international trade. And so, just two things we do really to so two core parts of our mandate. One is reducing risk for our clients, and the other is increasing access to capital. It's kind of two sides of the same coin, and there's really four different areas that we provide that kind of a mandate. There's a split between financial services and knowledge services. One is financing, so that's all our different loan guarantees, some direct lending, kind of things that increase access to working capital lines of credit, operating lines. That's kind of the financing side of the business. And then there's the insurance side. So a whole range of different insurance products, again, to companies that can insure their business. They might require, bonding support, performance bonds. Sometimes, when you're bidding on a contract, the company or project will require you to put up a bid bond, performance bond, so we can kind of
Hmm.
provide guarantees against that. But our most popular product, and Scott probably knows all these products better than I do, is the accounts receivable insurance. So it's really insuring a company's sales, and so I would say that's probably half of what we do on the financial side. And that's what we call kind of the sort of the sleep at night insurance, comfort insurance, right? Because as a company, small company, or even larger companies, knowing that you're doing a sale, to a foreign entity, but you know that your sales are covered, insured. 90% of your sales are insured. Kind of gives you that comfort, and it also allows you, knowing that you have those insured sales, to maybe provide a little bit better payment terms than your competitor, right? Give you a little bit of an edge. And then from the financing side, the bank side, most banks will actually extend credit, extend loans against those insured receivables. Again, gives them the comfort that, yeah, I'll insure this company because if anything goes wrong, they're backed by a AAA rated government of Canada entity. So again, that's been a very popular product. And the presentation we did last week for the webinar Wednesdays for Candu, we get into a lot more detail of some of those financing and insurance programs. Probably won't go into those in too much detail today, but I know a little bit later Scott is going to give sort of a small case study, a case example that talks a little bit about some of the financing solutions. And then I guess third is we have a whole suite of knowledge products that brings sort of years and years of EDC's international trade expertise and all of the work that we've done with our partners over the years, and taking that kind of trade ecosystem, all that knowledge, and packaging it into kind of modules and smaller packages that companies can easily digest. Companies that are looking to export for the first time, companies that are looking at a particular market or have a particular issue, they can go through EDC to get a lot of the information they need. Or if we don't have it, we'll work with one of our partners to provide the information. And then finally, it's what we call the connections, and that's where we'll actually work to introduce Canadian companies, typically smaller ones, mid-sized ones, into international supply chains. So we have a program around that to do those connections. Some of the programs we have can be quite formal matchmaking events. A lot of it's really informal. For example, Scott might know of he might have a client that's worked with a company in the U.S. already, gets to know that U.S. company, and gets to learn a little bit about that company's procurement needs or what they're investing in, and then another Canadian company that Scott might know about. It might do that kind of informal introduction. So there's a lot of that informal kind of back and forth goes through as well. And I guess one thing that's kind of common through all of the work that we do is typically done in a partnership approach. EDC will very seldom do a complete financing of a project or a company on its own 100%. We do it, but it's typically we'll work with the company's bank. So providing that guarantee or providing that insurance that the bank can lend against. And we work with pretty much every. I would say, Scott, probably pretty much every financial institution in Canada we work with, from the biggest banks to the credit unions, to the First Nations Bank and Peace Hills Trust. So all of those are partners offering EDC solutions to their clients. So we're all about adding capacity. And in the case of like a bank, whatever, sometimes if a bank has a client, and again, this can be Indigenous, non-Indigenous, and maybe the bank is just not quite there. We'd like to do this deal, but if we had just a little bit of the risk taken off the table, so then they can turn to EDC and look at some of our guarantee products or some of our other products, do that kind of risk sharing. So we're bringing that capacity into play. So the bank is happy, the company's happy because they're getting the line of credit or the loan, the capital they need, and of course EDC is I guess happy in a way in that we fulfilled our mandate. But it's not about us; it's about helping the company, right?
I've got a question.
Yeah.
Just maybe I'll explain a little bit about what I'm doing here.
Definitely.
I'm a retired federal public service executive. Been retired for a couple of years, and right now I've got a contract with Public Service and Procurement Canada, working with OSME, BC region, on their Indigenous engagement and procurement strategy. So I was very interested to hear on how you work with suppliers, Indigenous suppliers, and making that connections piece that you talked about just earlier. And you just mentioned offering financing through Peace Hills Trust and others. Do you deal at all with NACA and the other AFI network throughout the country as well?
No, not directly. No, we've been talking with the AFI, some of the larger AFIs and the NACA network, but we don't have any formal relationship with them directly. Even though we have a partnership agreement with them, we sponsor their events and those kinds of things. But in terms of a direct lending relationship, no, we don't have anything directly with them. It's something that you raise a good point, because it's something that we've been pursuing, but it hasn't got a whole lot of traction just yet.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm wanting to do through my contract is to connect the BC AFIs to the procurement opportunities, because there's so many of them. But I mean, the whole procurement process is so not user friendly, put it that way.
No.
So there's a lot of work to be done, both within the federal government and with the Indigenous supply community, to create that better understanding between the two. And there needs to be a lot of training for federal procurement officers to understand, to number one, become more aware of Indigenous suppliers in the country, and number two, to understand some of the issues and some of the opportunities that are available to them, and that they should look at using more of the mechanisms that they have available to them to actually do more contracting with Indigenous suppliers. So the AFI community is one that I've been a part of. I've been the the president and now vice president of All Nations Trust Company out of Kamloops in British Columbia, and for 20 years. And, you know, a lot of our businesses that we've helped over the years have grown exponentially and are quite likely export ready in many areas, and definitely ready to do business with the federal government. But just the whole maze that they face when they try to access those opportunities just turn them off and they go and do something else a lot of times. So I think there's real good opportunities for, you know, OSME, through our Indigenous engagement, through your department and the work that you do, to work together to support Indigenous suppliers get involved with supply chains and the different opportunities that are available to them. So I was really interested in hearing this. So
yeah,
just wanted to give you a little bit of background why I'm here. And
so that's a great point you raise. You know, one organization you might want to connect with is the Canadian Council for Aboriginal Business. They've been doing a lot of work around procurement. Tabitha, Tabitha Bull, she's the president and CEO of that organization. And also coming up, I believe it's February 25th, CCAB and EDC and BDC are having a webinar on supplier diversity. And of course, a lot of that's going to be speaking to Indigenous suppliers. So one thing, you know, I should point out, and actually maybe I can just bring up a couple of slides here. I'm going to share my screen here. I'm not going to go through the full deck because we're a pretty small group. We can keep it a little intimate. So I'm just going to bring down here this one up here. So one thing we often, we've done the intro to EDC, so I don't need to go through the slides up front, but often we get questions like, who is an exporter, who qualifies as an exporter? And so one thing, that exporting is not just for large companies, smaller companies can do that as well. And in fact, a lot of our clients, the majority of our clients are smaller and medium-sized businesses that export, but really any company that, sells a product or a service outside of Canada is an exporter, and increasingly we're seeing a lot more services being exported. As I mentioned on the Alberta session this morning, I mean, when I started back at EDC a long time ago, really an export had to be something tangible, something you could drop on your foot, right? But now we're seeing a lot more services being exported, and again, it's new technology. It's a lot of the trade deals that we're in are making it easier to trade in services. You got online e-commerce, a whole range of different things, and it's also the ability of people to travel more. That a lot of services need to be delivered in person. So when we tell people that if you have a product that you think can't be exported, then think again. It probably can. Of course, 2020 with COVID, put a damper on that, but we think we'll be back, if not this year, then later this year, but certainly probably next year. And another thing we talk about a lot as well is the export supply chain. So a lot of companies in Canada may not be a direct exporter, as opposed to they're the last company in the export chain before it goes to a foreign customer. So we have a lot of most of big Canadian sectors are export intensive, with big export supply chains in Canada. So think of resources, mining, energy, forestry, a lot of agri-food sectors, big manufacturing sectors, and increasingly a lot of service sectors as well, big service companies. So if you're a company operating in those supply chains, you can actually, we define you as an exporter as well. You're an indirect exporter, but an exporter nonetheless. And you can use any of EDC's services. So Tim, getting to your point on procurement, so if it's a strictly domestic transaction, it's probably not something EDC could get too involved in. There has to be that export element, but again, our export mandate, as we like to say, you can drive a truck through it, right? It's a very broad definition of what constitutes sort of an export and the export supply chain.
Mm.
So I just want to given we're a small audience, I don't think I'm going to go through this full thing here, but we're going to make this deck available to everyone here. But we were doing, certainly in this morning session, and building on the session we had last week, was giving a lot of hints and sort of not hints, but a lot of sort of advice and guidance on building an export plan, what you need to think about. Why a plan is important, and I won't go through all the details there because I think that the conversation is actually a little more useful at this point. And again, what financial institutions will look for in a plan, why you need a plan, and basically, bottom line here is that if they see you have a good plan, a good business plan, a good export plan, it gives them the confidence to to work with you and give you the give you the credit, the operating lines that you might need. Again, very simple process. Some of this might seem kind of obvious, but again, it all goes back to being prepared, being ready, knowing what your company can and can't do, knowing your product or service, taking the time to really identify and kind of explore those international opportunities. Do they meet what you're offering? And having a really good kind of strategy or a focused kind of step-by-step process in place to support that. And certainly for Indigenous companies, one thing we recommend is really to take advantage, or if you can, build that Indigenous brand into your product or service. That can be very useful in some markets and in some countries. And to that end, also getting that Indigenous supplier certification, that's also becoming increasingly useful as part of a business strategy as well. For example, the Canadian government has a target now of I think it's a 5% procurement target from Indigenous suppliers, and like the CCAB and others have said, that's not really a ceiling, that's really a floor, right? So that's something to aim for, and then to build on that. And again, for anyone who is building an export plan, once you kind of sit back and really think about all the different resources you need across the whole spectrum, right? Whether it's financing, lending, the logistics, shipping, information on product or market information, making sure you have the right technology and processes in place, your human capital. I mean, you need skilled labor, good people, and of course, any kind of the legal and IP, intellectual property protection. And one thing we're seeing increasingly too is the need for companies that do have that Indigenous brand, Indigenous certification, to really take steps to protect that. So I'm going to show you a few tools. Again, I'm skipping ahead here, but some of the stuff I've covered. So we have developed some tools that might be useful for you guys. One is the EDC Company Insight, and that's basically a database of companies globally, and I forget the count now, but I think there's tens of thousands of companies in this, if not more, in this database. So that's a tool where you can go in and if you've been introduced to a company or you're looking for some prospects, you can start your due diligence on them, see if there's any red flags on that company, those kinds of things. And I know a lot of people have been using that, and a lot of the people at EDC use that tool as a good starting point. Start getting some of those prospects. Then we have the EDC Enlist, and that's kind of all the services that you can draw upon to get your product to market, whether it's a good or service. So again, you can excuse me, you can find go in if you need a customs broker, if you need some advice from a law firm about certain kind of border rules, border restrictions. These are the kind of firms and services you can find here. The the shippers, the logistics guys, the freight forwarders, they all have kind of their sort of profiles of their business, what they offer. And the good thing here is too that these organizations, not just anybody can go in and put up their information there. They are sort of checked out and vetted by EDC first to make sure that that they're trustworthy, and it's these are companies that our clients use all the time. And then more recently, we did a webinar with Google, and it's all around. There was another organization involved in that webinar, but it escapes me at this point. I know they had some kind of a specialty on Asian markets, but this webinar again is available for free on our website. And one good thing I would point out here is the tool that's been developed by Google on Market Finder. So you can put in some information about your company, your products, your services, what you're interested in doing, and then Google's got their algorithms that can kind of give you advice and guidance on which markets. One thing I will add at this point is that I would recommend that you go, if you're interested in any of these products or services, to go to EDC and register for a My EDC account. It's no charge for it. It's free registration. You will have to put in a little bit of information, but that's just our marketing folks like that. They like data, and again, it allows them to kind of see what the needs are and what get a better understanding of our client base, and better understanding if we have the right tools and information for them. I'm going to give you the links to all that later. And you will get a copy of this presentation, and all these links are built right in. Again, I'm not going to spend too much time on this. These are just some additional information sources. So for the financial sector and any business plan, export plan, your financial plan is critical. Again, it's something that your lenders and bankers, and whether it's an AFI or a mainstream bank or a smaller trust company, they're going to be looking for a good financial plan just to basically ensure that you know what you're doing, you're well organized, and then gives them again the confidence. And again, just a quick overview of some of the stuff you want to include in your financial plan. So I'm going to stop there and give myself a break, and Scott is going to talk about a case study. And I believe this was a forestry company in British Columbia, or it's a forestry company in Western Canada anyway. And so if you're good to go, Scott, I can turn it over to you.
Yeah, thank you. So in this particular case, first of all, can everybody hear me all right? Just a thumbs up or a nod? Perfect.
Yep.
Yeah. I've never been known to be quiet, says my mother, so hopefully I can speak loud. In this particular case, it is a forestry company, and what we were able to do here is work with their bank to share the risk, and in some cases transfer the risk, and I'll go into a bit of detail about what that means, in order to help this company scale up, and by scaling up, to go after larger contracts. So what happened was they won an opportunity with a large forestry company to provide supply chain services to this company. So this would be a case of an Indigenous-owned business working with a local Indigenous-controlled financial institution, which we supported. And what we were able to do was to facilitate a bump in their loan, their operating line of credit. So they had more working capital to do some upfront work that the contract required. And in this particular case, initial cuts, some logging road access, costs they have to do before they can start to put in their billings. So it was upfront cost to make this contract work for them. So the financial institution at the time had an existing line of credit with them for about $100,000, but it wasn't enough. So with our support, what we provided was an export guarantee to their financial institution that basically says, we're going to share the risk with you. We're going to share the security with you. And that elevated the risk tolerance of the financial institution to increase the line of credit from $100,000 to $300,000. And that gave them a bump in their working capital in order to pay some of the upfront costs required to execute this contract they'd won. Another way that we helped to transfer the risk was we issued a trade guarantee. So that trade guarantee is a promise from EDC to the bank in the form of a guarantee in support of a letter of credit issuance. You know, in some cases, certain businesses need to issue a letter of credit in forestry, mining, oil and gas for a number of different reasons, regulatory, environmental, performance, etc. And so rather than having to put up the cash as they typically would to secure a letter of credit from their financial institution, our guarantee replaces that cash. So the cash stays working and our guarantee supports the letter of credit issuance. I mean, for example, there's no point in bidding on a contract for $1 million, for example, if the working capital you need to fulfill that contract is locked up in securing a letter of credit that you needed to issue for the contract. It becomes counterproductive. So in essence, what we were able to do is increase through the guarantee and this sharing of risk with the bank, a line of credit that had a seasonal bulge from 100,000 to 300,000, in addition to supporting the letter of credit that needed to be issued as well through our international trade guarantee program. So the difference between sharing the risk and transferring the risk with our export guarantee program, we basically share the security with the bank on some pro rata basis. So in the event of a default, the bank would basically go through its typical way of trying to recover its proceeds from the loan. But if there was any shortfall, that's where our guarantee kicks in to make the financial institution whole, in part or up to the value of the percentage of the guarantee. In this particular case, it was 60%. So if after the recovery process went through, the bank was still short on its initial loan funds, we would cut them a check for 60% of the value outstanding that was not recovered. So it helps make the bank whole on deals. And that's what increases the risk appetite. They know they have this backstop to be made whole in part or entirely in some cases in the event of a default. On the trade guarantee, we take on the risk entirely. We are unsecured. The guarantee we provide to the bank is irrevocable, and it's out there for the tenor of a letter of credit, typically for 3 to 5 years as a maximum. So these are the three ways that we work with the financial institution to backstop some risk issues that the bank had at the time. And we were able to facilitate the scale of the company. So not only can they just win this contract, they're now positioned to bid on bigger contracts going forward as well. Thank you.
That's great, Scott. Yeah, great example. And I'm sorry I wasn't keeping up with the slides there, but I think you were speaking to this one at the end. So this is just one example, right, of a when a company is kind of at that point getting new contracts, whether it's an export contract or in this case an indirect export contract. How they can tap into some of EDC's financial programs, like to help get them the credit they need. And quite often, as Scott noted, it'll be in partnership with an existing their existing bank or financial institution. And if they're, if it's a smaller company that doesn't have that kind of business relationship with the bank, then we can certainly introduce the company to one of our bank partners who are always quite keen to take on new clients, especially when there's a risk sharing agreement like this. For sure. And one thing we should mention too, so the example here talks a little bit about the export guarantee program, which is literally a loan guarantee program. EDC provides a backstop. So we have in response to COVID, we put in a sort of a streamlined version of that export guarantee program, and that's it's not contingent on there being an export angle, whether it's a direct or indirect or part of an export supply chain. So that BCAP loan guarantee, Business Credit Availability Program, is available to all businesses in Canada, whether they're domestic or export focused or not. It takes the loan guarantee process, streamlines it. Longer tenor is available, up to 5 years is available. EDC will not do any of our own due diligence on that. We'll let the bank carry the pen, and also EDC will not look for any collateral securitization. Again, we leave all that to the bank. The only on that in that regard, the requirement is that it's it's a viable underlying business behind that. So that's something that's available for for all domestic businesses. And right now it's currently available till the end of June 2021, and we're starting to see some pretty good uptake on that one as well. I'm just going to go through quickly, some other slides and information resources that might be of interest. So this is one here that we put together and really kind of looks at the whole kind of process, the exporter journey, right, and what EDC can provide along the way. So if you look right over towards the left side, it's companies that maybe are not exporting yet. They're just getting their sort of business plan, corporate strategy in place, starting to build an export plan. So we're just putting there some of the things to think about, some of the things to look for. And of course, then down below in the blue boxes, you can click on the link to get more information on those resources. And then right to the to the far end, it might be companies that are already getting their export sales, looking to grow into new markets, do more complex deals, maybe look at investing in a foreign market. Again, so it's a full spectrum there, and there's information and kind of help along the way. The point here to remember is that EDC can work with you and support you regardless of where you are on that export journey. And one final slide I will bring up. So these are some of the resources I was talking about earlier, and in particular the My EDC account. So will allow you to access all of these resources, whether it's webinars, some of those databases like the customer and supplier databases I was talking about earlier. With the My EDC account as well, you can get access to the Export Help Hub. You can go in and ask questions to our trade advisors and to our exporter outreach group. If you've got a specific question on a specific issue, it could be as something as like I have this my product and I want to ship it to to the southern U.S. How do I do that? How do I go about doing that? And they can give you guidance on that, and perhaps introduce you to some of our other partners as well that we work with. Like I say, we will share this this presentation with you. I'm going to stop there and go back, and let's see if any questions, comments.
Yeah, I have a question. It's Tim here.
Yep.
That export number that you in that exporter journey slide, there was that piece. I think it was on the planning, getting an export number. You get that when you register with My EDC, or is that a separate thing?
You apply for your export-import number. That will go through, I believe, and I'll confirm this, but that comes through the, I think, Canadian Border Services Agency. Am I right, Scott? Are you certain on? Or?
I'm not certain of that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think that's your, yes. Yeah, so we'll find that out for you, but I believe that's where you go through the actual our customs border Customs Border Service Agency.
So if you register with My EDC, there's likely to be a link explaining how you go about getting that number, I suppose.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, and if you can't find it, you can actually pose the question, and one of our trade advisors will find that information for you. I'm sure I know the people on that team, and I'm pretty sure they know that offhand.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and there's no cost for that service. It's free service.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, so for the exporting, is that air, water, and land
Yes.
exporting?
Yeah. It can be any of those modes of transportation. Yeah.
And you would only need that one export number?
That will depend on what you're selling or what market you're going to. Some countries will require an import permit. You may also need a documentation on the Canadian side as well. Again, some of the information there, the export import number. You may need, particularly if you're selling, like an example, you're selling a food product. So when you're selling food products, there tends to be more sort of more attention paid to that, and there'll be a little bit more paperwork, making sure you meet all the product standards, making sure you meet the product codes of the country that you're exporting it to. So that's the benefit of some of our trade agreements we have, like the one with the European Union trade agreement, and of course the new NAFTA or CUSMA or whatever our latest acronym you want to use on that. So in a lot of those trade agreements, there's a provision in there that sort of recognizes each country's standards. So if your product, be it a food product or any kind of product or service, meets Canadian standards, then the trade partner, whether it's US or the European Union, and some of the Asian countries that we have with the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, will recognize those standards as well. And vice versa, Canada will do the same thing, right? So we'll recognize those product standards, and that covers a lot of the goods that are traded back and forth. But there's a whole sort of series of documents. I wouldn't say a series of documents. That sounds too daunting, but there is paperwork and documents for trading to be done, and again, through the My EDC, our trade advisors can fill you in on all of that, and I don't think I have it in this presentation, but I should. The Canadian Border Service Agency, they've got a pretty good web page as well, and kind of walks you through all the different steps and sort of the forms required for each one. I mean, it's a bit of work, I'll be honest, but if once you do it once, the second time you do it, it gets easier. The third time gets easier still, and so we've seen a lot of companies starting off with literally 3 or 4 people, and they've been able to grow their business into 25, 30 people just through those export sales. If you remember, Canada is we're a small slice of the global market, actually less than 2%, somewhere between 1.5% to 2% of the market. And so there's a lot of opportunities outside of Canada. And it does take a little bit of research and legwork, and hopefully some of the links and resources I'm sharing here today can help you with that.
I was just wondering, what about certain products like Canada has somewhat legalized marijuana or cannabis, if you want to say, and how would that look at being exported?
So EDC will support that if it's going through. I know the rules were recently updated on that, but it has to be we won't support exports to another country or jurisdiction where, say, marijuana is illegal. So we won't support that. But if it's, I know medical marijuana is the easiest one of all to export, because a lot of countries now have done that, and I think for the I guess what's the term, recreational marijuana, there's some strict rules around that, and I'll be honest, I don't know the latest rules around that, but one thing for sure, it has to be the country or market that it's going to, it also has to be legal there. Otherwise we'll be doing something illegal in a foreign market.
I've worked on 3 separate deals for marijuana export. Todd, I can comment if you like, or
definitely, by all means, yeah, definitely.
So from an EDC point of view, what Todd described is absolutely correct. Medicinal marijuana, generally the deals I worked on had to do with exports to Europe and Australia, where Canada was basically growing the crop to a certain yield quality and medicinal quality. And the company growing it had to have that license, that medical license from Health Canada. And in order for us to support an exporter of medical marijuana, the company to whom they were selling to in their country also had to provide evidence and proof that they were licensed as a medical marijuana provider. So we had to have that link. With respect to the United States, what I learned was that certain states have legality arrangements, other states are still illegal, but the federal border is illegal. So we cross the federal border into the US, our products for marijuana have to abide by federal standard, not the state standard. So the challenge is, we as individuals and companies, if they're deemed by the United States as a supplier of illicit drugs, you can imagine the knock-on effects that could have with respect to federal laws, and you could be effectively criminalized and not allowed to cross the border into the United States. Any bank who supports such a thing, if the American system deems it a criminal activity, could cut that bank off of the American banking system as well, with respect to payment and other sorts of cash management, international flow of funds arrangements. So you can see why we're so very careful on dealing with the subject of medical marijuana. Did I add value to that question, to that answer? Okay.
Yeah, you did. Well, you did for me anyway.
Yeah, definitely. That's the last thing we would want to have, is that we wouldn't be able to cross the border with our dual citizenship. So that was good advice, but there's still ability to do exporting as long as we abide by the federal regulations to ship it across the border. Is that also air, water, and land?
Any way possible, including submarines.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
and quite frankly, we have no case that I'm aware of where we've worked with the United States on these issues. It's been primarily Europe and Australia. The American jurisdiction is just too tricky and carries too much risk for a lot of entrepreneurs who want to export medical marijuana to the United States at this point in time.
Yeah.
That could change tomorrow, who knows?
Yeah, I guess that's because I guess there's so many states of the 50 states that where it's legalized, so many where it's not legalized.
Yeah.
But really, I think what would change that if there was a at the federal level, right?
Right.
New administration brought in sort of legalization.
Yeah, it got to the point where companies in Australia dealing with Canadian suppliers had to make absolutely certain that no payment methodology was coming through any American bank whatsoever. Couldn't touch it. So they had to make sure that any payment methodology absolutely circumvented anything to do with American financial systems.
It makes sense. Yeah. All right. Thanks, Scott. Yeah, we've still got a few minutes. If there's any other questions, comments, recipes.
No questions. I thought it was a good presentation, good information. Look forward to the deck. Would be nice to get.
Yeah.
I do have to run, but thanks a lot for the information, guys, and
Thanks very
maybe
much.
we'll do some business together in the future.
And, yeah, so in the deck too, at the end of it, you'll see my email address there. It's pretty easy, tevans@edc.ca, and I think this is going to be posted on your website, right, Michelle? The deck as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the one that we did the other presentation we did last Wednesday, more for the national audience, it goes into a little more detail on some of the financial products we have, so that might be of interest as well.
Was that one well attended?
There was it was a national one, so I'm going to say 25 people maybe. I'm
Okay.
guessing, but that seemed like I'm just thinking of the participants.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Okay. Good.
Well, thank you, Tim, for joining. Thank you, Cindy, for your comments, your questions. Thank you so much. Todd and Scott from the Export Development Canada, your presentation was informative. It was thorough. You gave us much to think on. It would be good to go visit the website and do some legwork and do some research on your own. You planted a seed, so thank you so much. So hopefully we will see you back here for the webinars in the future. We just want to say thank you to Can Do for hosting these very important conversations, planting seeds, education, knowledge, that all of that is so important as we strengthen and build our communities or organizations and businesses and economy. So thank you for being here. We just give thanks. We want to give thanks, a shout out to Creator for the gift of another day, an opportunity to learn. We give thanks for the gift of this beautiful land, Mother Earth, the waters, the plants, the medicines, the animals. And we give thanks for the gift of this circle of family, chosen family. We give thanks for all of the good blessings that Creator has given to us. So be well, stay safe, and wherever you are, be warm. Take care, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Well,
Yeah, bye.